guys, welcome to our second video podcast. And this time we have a guest with us. And Kate, would you like to introduce our special guest?
This is my friend Frankie, who I know from when I used to live in York quite a few years ago. Frankie, do you want to start off by telling us just a little bit about yourself, what you do?
So I'm Frankie, I'm 29, steadily approaching 30. What do I do? So I work for the NSPCC, the children's charity, supporting people behind the scenes with helping children and families. I live just outside of York, and I've been in York for over 10 years now, originally from West Yorkshire, and then moved across for uni and never left. I was one of those people who fell in love with the city, and then also fell in love with a Yorkshireman and got married about 4 years ago. And yeah, it's just us two and our dog, who's called Gus, who is amazing. So yeah, that's us. Quite a simple little life in a Yorkshire village, really.
Great. Thanks very much. Cool. Well, we've invited Frankie here just to chat a little bit with you around mental health, well-being and self-esteem. Obviously that's one of the big aims of our charity. What we do is work in those areas, and we know that you are a strong character in that you share and are very open about that and your life. So we just wanted to just have a really chill chat with you about your experience and get to know you a little bit, and if you can share a little bit of what you've learned about yourself and the journey that you're on, that would be amazing. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I guess maybe you could just start us off by telling us a little bit about your journey with self-esteem, and what that, I guess, means to you now, and your experience with that for yourself.
Yeah, so for me, I started to feel really different when I was a teenager and felt that I didn't really fit in with other people, and also never felt like good enough. So that's still something that I hold on to even now, 15 years later, is a lot about being good enough and how I'm perceived by other people. And it's only in more recent years that I've started to let that go a little bit more and just be like, it doesn't really matter what other people think. That says more about them than it does about me. And I found that as a teenager, you got to think 15 years ago the world was quite different, and there was a lot of stigma around mental health and not as much support, knowledge and resources around it, and so I just was left feeling different and like I just didn't fit in and wasn't normal, and it was always, what's wrong with me, what am I not doing that everyone else is doing, why can't I be as happy as everybody else or as outgoing as everybody else? And it just, it wasn't great. And I just think that at that time I tried to just sort of muddle through, and I thought maybe it's just because I'm a girl, or maybe it's just because I'm a teenager, and never really got a true grasp on it being mental health until I kind of got to uni, I think. That's the point when I realised that all the things I was doing weren't really any good for me, and I went through periods of like quite a dark depression and self-harm, and I had like a suicide attempt as well, and at that time that was just how I knew to cope with things that were going on. Whereas we went down quite a dark path there quite quickly, didn't we? But but yeah, it's just been the things that I've battled with to try and feel better. And it was only as I started to explore more help with my mental health that I thought, actually, I don't need to go down that path, and there's other things that I can do. And it's building like a good support structure around you, and not being afraid of it. I think once I started to own my mental health and see it as something that I could take control of, that it definitely started to improve. And I think that's the journey I'm still on now, is just how can I have self-love and acceptance and good self-esteem in everything that I do. And I don't always win and don't always get it right, but I think it's accepting that as well, that sometimes you need a bit more downtime, and just that's not a failure at all. That's you being really in touch with what you need, and addressing that so that you can stay well in all aspects of wellness. So yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Where would you say the world places value on a person, because we talk a lot about self-esteem with our young people, and about you know, that sense of the value and worth that you have for yourself. And it's interesting to see different perspectives as to what they think, you know, what we all think. Like you said, we're all on a journey, and even like me and Naomi doing the job that we do, we have not got our self-esteem down. But like it's been a really interesting question I've been grappling with recently, is you know, where what do you think the world places value on, and how has that affected, therefore, like your self-esteem and in the past, and how has that been a part of your journey?
Sadly, I still think a lot of the world places value on how you present, what you look like, what your size is. I think that's something that I've really experienced through being a bigger person now and being a slimmer person in the past and things like that. That's been something I've seen kind of both aspects of. I think that there's a lot going on around social media, and even like now, you know, I think I'm not a teenager. I'm 29. You know, I've got an Instagram with kind of a healthy following, and more recently, I've noticed that I've like lost a lot of followers. And I have to kind of catch myself on and be like, that's no reflection on who I am. Maybe I wasn't the right person for that other follower to be following at this time. And that's fine. I unfollow people all the time because it's not what I want to see in my personal news feed. So I have to really like check myself when I start to think, but why didn't they want to see my life anymore? It's like, because maybe they just didn't, and that's fine. So that, I think, you know, likes and things like that can play a big part, but I think it's finding that bit of the world that puts value in the things that you put value in. So the world is a really big place, and I think to say what does the world give value to, that's quite a scary question. But if you work at it and try and build that space virtually and physically around you that is full of all the things that you want to be and that you see value in, then that's going to start to change.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting, because even once you recognize that, like I the other day was having a conversation and just getting so angry that, like, in places we, like you say, are defined by the way we look, and brings up that anger. But then still, before this, I thought, oh, I've got some spots, I need to put on some makeup, like I must do that. And then I caught myself, I was like, I'm literally about to go on to a conversation about like self-esteem, and that's not to, like, you know, put myself down further, but just to, like, I'm aware of some of that stuff, but still feed it in my own life. Like, why? Like, I'm so much more than that. And our young people are so much more than the way they look. And but yeah, you're right, like it's hard when we're fighting against a world that's often still does care about the way we look. I think it probably is much better than it's ever been, and we do have like so many great people leading away with this, you being one of them. But yeah, it's hard.
I remember
it's amazing, isn't it? But sometimes I find that, like, some of the young people that I work with and other people, they can't physically get past there is more to me than what I look like, because they're just so surrounded by it, like we all are all the time. Media, social media, the TV shows that we watch, it's all about perfection and a certain type of body and all these different things. And then it's so hard to be like, but like I was saying to someone the other day, but are you strong? And they were like, oh, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, have you got through every day of your life so far, including the tough ones? And she went, yeah. I was like, okay, so you're strong. Are you kind? And like going through all these different things and like trying to think about ourselves beyond what we look like and into those like characteristics can be almost like, it was almost like painful for us to be able to switch that viewpoint, to be like, oh, but yeah, so there is more to me than my physical appearance, because you're just so surrounded by it all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that always sticks with me is I went to therapy when I was finishing uni, and I kept talking about, you know, I just don't feel good enough. I remember my therapist at the time, she just said, according to who? Like, who is judging that? Because maybe that's where, and it was where a lot of my issues were laying, is that I was giving that power to people who didn't have that and weren't worth that energy of mine. So yeah, that's something that's always stuck with me, like, according to who.
Yeah, that's really good. And even like those people that we like deem good enough or that we compare ourselves to are more than likely also not feeling good enough and comparing themselves to someone else, and it's like this irritating and frustrating, like, endless cycle.
So how would you say, like, so tell us a bit more about like your journey of self-esteem and how that's changed, and what changes you had to make, and like to kind of work on that and to get to, you know, where you are now.
So I think a big thing was the first time I went to therapy, so that was at the end of uni, and that just gave me a bit of control over my life. I was feeling really worried about finishing uni and not wanting to move back home. That wasn't really an option for me. I needed it to be a springboard to something else rather than just going back to home. And that helped me really work through, like, you know, who am I giving value and power to in order to pass judgment on me. And just kind of taking back a bit of that control and seeing it as my choice and what I wanted to do. And then I think from there, I went through a very weird patch. Like, I now see it as a bit of a weird patch, but it was my life for like 4 years. I was heavily involved with a slimming group, and so that was just like a real negative correlation. The more that I put value and emphasis into changing my physical appearance, the more that my mental health, well-being and self-esteem declined. And it was only sort of as I came to the end of that and was completely broken, that reflecting on it, I was like, oh, so maybe that's why I'm not in a great place, is because I've tried so hard to fit in with society's expectation and lost a lot of weight and was getting all those compliments of, aren't you good? Do you know, aren't you amazing, because of what you look like and because of what you've put your body through and because of how you've battered your mental health. And it was such a bizarre life to be leading that I was getting all this praise for something that had completely broken me. And when I left that, you know, I left the manager position I was in, I left running groups, I left all my members, so I left my job and just literally had nothing. And I think that was a real turning point, where after I'd sat on the sofa for a few good weeks with the dog just having a cry, I was like, well, what do I want then? Because I definitely don't want any of that anymore. What is my other option? And it meant that I could just start to rebuild pieces of myself and my life that had people in it that I wanted to be in it, and led me to a job now that I really, really enjoy, and just sort of found myself again and took like real ownership. And I stopped thinking about what should I be doing and actually what do I want to do, and saying yes to things that I'd been terrified to do in the past, and saying no to things that had really damaged me in the past. And I think that was a real turning point, where I just thought, my life can be what I want it to be. It doesn't have to hinge on what I look like as much anymore. And through that, I've regained all the weight that I lost, and had some very awkward conversations with people about that. Oh, I'm really worried because you put all this weight back on. And I'm like, well, are you worried, or are you just feeling that I'm not as valuable to you anymore because I'm no longer a size 10? I'm now a size 22. And what does that mean? That means more to you than it does to me. So just taking that control back and that power back, and not being ashamed by it. And I now wear bikinis, which I'd never worn before. And like, my life is so different now. And I'm really loving the person that I'm becoming, which is really special. So
great.
Yeah,
I think that word "should" is really powerful.
Yeah.
It's one that I've worked on before as well, again with like a counsellor that I had. It's like, I should be a certain way, or I should have been able to do that thing, or I should be this way. It's so powerful, isn't it? But again, it's what you said earlier, but like, by whose judgment? It's really interesting. It's very, very powerful word, and I use it all the time. I should have, like, for me it's around my health as well. So I have a chronic illness where I get really, really tired. So like for me it's like, oh, but I should have been able to do that because I used to, and I should be able to keep up with other things. And it's just, yeah, it's a word that we can use so negatively on ourselves as well, but has such power in it.
There's like something, I guess, in what you're saying about that sacrifice or letting go of what other people say and think, which is painful. It's so hard. But you're right, like we're surrounded, like, and people don't necessarily mean bad, or like when they compliment people the way they look, but like I do that, and I say, wow, like you look great, and or that top really suits you, or that color really suits you, but it kind of feeds into, that's the most valuable thing about you, and like that is the thing that matters, like the way you look. And I've tried to make a conscious effort at the moment to like not compliment people less, but compliment like in their character and their personality more.
Starts from such a young age as well, isn't it? Like I've found that with my nieces, that it's like, hey, beautiful, or oh, I love your dress, or your shoes are so sparkly. And it's not that, like, and they love that, and it is exciting, but like I've had to start making a conscious decision that instead, if I see them, I'll go, hello kind girl, or hello strong girl, or something like that, and like change the perception on, because from such a young age that is where you're complimented and how you're seen. But I want them to be seen for the other things that make them who they are, because I mean, one of my nieces particularly, we call her the sass master. You would not cross her. She's 4. Is she 4? Yeah, she's 4. She's just 4. But you would not cross that girl, because she's so powerful. But she is so kind, and like especially in lockdown, she's had so many things to say about, you know. She said to her brother, no, you can't go to school because we're saving the world. And like she's just got this amazing perspective. And that's what we should be seeing in other people, isn't it? That's what we should be complimenting. That's what we should be saying. And it's not that I don't think she's beautiful, because she is, obviously. But for me, it's like, oh, but she also has kindness and strength of character, and strong personality, like her auntie. But yeah, it's great.
Nothing wrong with that.
Kind of throwing you under the bus a little bit here, Frankie, but do you have any kind of opinion on whether you feel like, I guess, self-esteem is more challenging at the moment during lockdown? Like, do you think lockdown is impacting people's self-esteem? Or have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know myself. I have really struggled throughout like the last 12 weeks. I was still at work for 5 weeks and was just like keeping going and everything's great. And then I just physically hit a wall and was just like, I need to go lay down in a dark room for a few days and think about what I need for me. And just really tune back into what I needed. And that can be reading a book, that can be doing a bit of yoga, that can be doing absolutely nothing, staring into space for an hour. That's also fine. But I think it's also been quite intrusive on people. You know, even a Zoom call like this, you know, you're into people's homes, you're seeing where they live and what they do, and how they surround themselves. And so that's been quite an eye-opener as well, just how I've responded to that and how other people have as well.
Do you think the pressure on physical appearance and things like that has changed as well because of lockdown?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sick to the back teeth of seeing it's not COVID-19 you need to worry about, it's that COVID-15. Yeah, I think the diet culture seems rife at the moment, and it's like, how are you going to have your lockdown glow up and all this other stuff? And it's just so frustrating that people and companies that earn millions of pounds a year, do you know, this isn't like someone sat in the living room trying to make a bit of money because they've lost a job through like lockdown and stuff. This is companies that are preying on vulnerable people at a time when there's a global pandemic, and rather than trying to keep them safe and well and protected, they're saying the worst thing that could possibly happen to you right now is that you've gained weight, and that when you're released back into the world, you're going to physically look different. Like, let's take this time to change who you are and leave lockdown summer ready. And I'm just, oh, my life, it frustrates the hell out of me, because I just think that there's people that this is going to damage, and you know, people are losing their lives. And if you've put a bit of weight, if you've gained a bit of weight, if you've lost a bit of weight, like, that's a byproduct of you surviving lockdown, and it doesn't define who you are or how successful your lockdown has been.
So, it's amazing to see how advertising has changed on like news feeds and stuff, to be like, you know, look great for your Zoom calls and stuff like that. I've seen like loads of advertising about like makeup and you know, tops, because obviously, like, you know, you can just do the whole PJ bottoms but look smart on the top situation.
I have joggers on.
Have you? Yeah, I have actually got dressed today, but more like I get dressed every day, but I was in like, usually I live in yoga leggings and tops, but today I was like, I did it for me. But yeah, my newsfeed is just full of like that glow, like the Zoom glow and stuff like that. It's just crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah, I have seen a real mixture of, like, half of the people I follow are like sharing so many workout videos or like doing live workout things, which some have been great, I've joined in on, but it's when it gets, you know, when it's every second post you see, it's overwhelming. Or the opposite of, people being like, well, I've gained so much weight in this lockdown and can't stop eating this and all the rest, which is equally as triggering. Like, it's either ends of the spectrum, but still the same route, really, isn't it? But
and I think it comes back to that word should as well, because if it's all you're constantly seeing on your news feeds on Facebook or Instagram, then you think, I should be doing that too, or should I be doing that too? And it's losing that, you know. I always try to think of, I could do that, or I could do something else, or I might try that, or that could be something I want to explore, you know, but not absolutely pigeonhole to this influencer is doing a live workout 5 days a week, so oh my god, I should be doing that as well. Like, it's taking that pressure off and being like, well, what could you do, or what might you do, or you just might not do anything, and that's also fine.
That's great. And that's one thing I've seen you share a bit on Instagram as well, Frankie, about the whole pressure, not only to do with weight and looks and all that kind of thing, but to do with all of the other pressure of achievement at the minute. You know, like, oh, you should learn a new skill, and you now have time to learn a new language and do all these crazy things. And I'm not saying those things aren't good. Actually, it's been so helpful for me to have those projects and things that I can do. You know, I've been in lockdown on my own, so like keeping busy and having things to do has been great. But also I did find myself going too far in the other direction, that I forgot to look after my well-being by keeping so busy, because I didn't even stop and think about how I was feeling, because I wanted to just, like, you know, channel through and keep going. And eventually my body does tend to shut down a lot anyway, and it just was like, no, I can't do this. You know, it's so important to have that balance of, you know, all those news feeds full of so and so's doing this, and like my sister's currently furloughed, and she's like done amazing work on her garden, and her house has been almost redecorated top to bottom. But I forget, like, I'm still working, and I'm grateful to be, but I'm looking at her even and going, oh, well, my expectations are that I should be, you know, my garden should look amazing, and I should have time to do all these things.
And like people have started doing all sorts of crazy stuff, like learning instruments and things, and I just think, I've done none of that. Like, my life isn't much different to what it was like pre-furlough, pre-lockdown, pre-pandemic. And I just try and like check in with myself every day. I kind of get up and potter about a bit in my PJs. I'm just like, what do I want to do today? Like, I might bake something, or I might just sit and watch a box set, or there's things I have to do, like the dog needs a walk every day. I can't get away from that, sadly. And sometimes it's like I've done 5 things before lunchtime, and other days it gets like 9 p.m. I'm like, I'll just walk him to the end of the street and back, and it'll be fine. So yeah, I just try and check in and think, how am I feeling? Where are my energy levels at as well? Because it's very much different day to day.
And sleep is so hugely affected at the moment as well. my sleep patterns have been all over the place, and a lot of people that I've talked to have found that as well. So not just lockdown, but some of lockdown, how would you say you take care of your well-being?
So after I got bigger and put my weight back on, I wanted to find new hobbies and things that I could do that were kind of on my terms. And I found that that wasn't kind of joining a gym or going to organised exercise classes as such. And instead I started running, which was really scary, because the first time I went running, I was like, everyone's gonna be looking at me and thinking, why is this fat girl trying to run? But it turns out I really enjoy it, and got out of my head, and I joined a local running club and like found other people to run with. And that's been amazing. Like I'm good, because through lockdown I was supposed to be running my first half marathon, and that sadly got cancelled. So and like it will happen at some point.
Complete 50 miles in the last month, so Mind charity. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I've just run 50 miles last month. I know. And it's just kind of taken off from there. So running is definitely up on my list of like keeping in touch with my well-being and things. And I think as well, it's helped me to lose a bit of that should mentality, because it's like, oh, I should really go out for a run today. It's like, well, I don't want to, so I'll just do it tomorrow. Like, the world's not going to end if I don't run today. So that's been quite good. And then I've started reading a lot more books that are from the voices of people who look and think like me. I went really off fiction for a long time, because I didn't feel that I didn't feel represented within the fiction I was reading. And you know, how many chick flicks have we read or seen that are like, girl changes her life, girl gets the guy, girl is happy,
girl changes her looks in order to then get the guy.
Yeah. Girl lands the dream job when she dresses different.
Yeah. She's found the love of her life. But she put glasses off and put on a new outfit.
Yeah. And it's the best friend that she always knew, and he just decided that he now liked her. So yeah, I was sick of reading and seeing stuff like that. So I changed a lot of what I was reading as well. And so reading books, like there's a Danish comedian called Sophie Hagen who wrote a book called Happy Fat, which is brilliant. I read Michelle Obama's Becoming, which was fantastic.
Love it.
I'd love
so
to
into
I
it.
watched the documentary about her on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, I had it on in the background, so I don't feel like I fully captured all of it, but it definitely made me want to read the book. And she was talking about her image and how that was such a huge part of the campaign, especially as being a Black woman and not being seen as being aggressive or like a certain way because of who she was and what she looked like, and so much about what she wore was how she was judged as well, rather than what she did.
And other things, like there's a woman called Taryn Brumfitt she's Australian, and she's the whole embrace movement. So I've read her book, I've seen her documentary, and just started to kind of like fill my life with things that were representing what I was striving to be. And so that really helps me to stay a bit grounded and think it's not just me in the world, like there are other people trying to get this message out there and share the good stuff. And I have to really come at it of a place of not wanting answers. I think that's really important. I've had to really manage my own expectations from the things that I read and things that I attend. Like I went to a summit last year that was all around like self-love, etc. And it had all these different speakers, and I really had to remind myself that I wasn't there to be fixed. I was there in a good place where I was just wanting to be surrounded by people who were looking for similar things. Because if not, I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in, oh, I just need to do what they've said and that's going to fix me. Because that's very much like when I was part of the slimming group, and it was, I just need to do what they've said and that's going to fix me. So I think whatever content you're reading or exploring, feel free to walk away from it, or feel free to adopt bits of it, but don't feel you have to give your whole life over to it in order to find the happiness that individual found doing it that way. I think that's really important.
That's amazing.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that, the whole not being fixed thing, and actually doing things like for you, because one big thing that we talk about a lot in one of our courses is that one thing that might work for someone else doesn't work for other people. And like, it's how I manage my anxiety is probably not how you would you know, both of you would manage yours either, because like for me, if like for you, running is such a huge part of how you take care of your well-being, but for me, if somebody said go for a run, I'd be like, that's literally going to make me more anxious and have a panic attack, because it would be awful. Whereas for me, if you're like, oh, you know, if you're feeling anxious, like do some creative or go for a swim or like something more like that, like, yeah, it's so personal, isn't it? And it's not about thinking that somebody's got a quick fix for you as well, and just because something works for someone else, it's just such a journey. I've got this word, the word journey is such a part of my dictionary in the minute, but it's just like, it's so true that like, and it's such a personal thing as well, that exploring what works for you, and you've been really like working on discovering that for yourself the past few years, and that's so great. I love that.
Yeah. And like more recently, I've really got into yoga. When they said that we could only leave the house once a day as part of lockdown, I was like, well, that means I either have to go for a run or walk the dog. I can't go out twice. So on days when I was like taking the dog out, I was doing a bit of yoga. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know. And it found me, I took like a few different instructors and videos on YouTube. I'm not paid for anything, which is great, but just to find the person that clicked with me and how I wanted to do yoga, and just trying to pick that up and do that every now and again. So yeah, just different stuff. Don't feel afraid to like put stuff down again though, because it's like you might try something and be like, not really. What else is there?
Yeah, no, I've noticed that there's some people that I would like do some, like whether it's a HIIT workout or Pilates or something, are my two favorites, and there's some people that really annoy me watching them, and I realized it was because they were coming across as like that it wasn't a struggle to them, like they were, and that obviously, you know, there's something in there for me to reflect on for myself. But one of the reasons I love Joe Wicks's videos so much is because halfway through he's like, oh, this is really hard and all of that stuff, and I'm like, yes, that's what I want. Like, I want my instructor to tell me it's also hard for them, because it makes me feel like I'm not like really, that I'm doing it really wrong, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm not any of this enough. Like, it's okay to be finding it hard. So yeah, like I totally get that, finding people that actually you feel helps you with it rather than like makes you feel worse after doing the video.
Definitely.
So is there any advice that you would now give after all of the stuff you've experienced and learned, that you would say to your teenage self?
I was thinking about this, and I find this really difficult because I wouldn't change a single thing. I absolutely live with no regrets. All the good stuff and the bad stuff, it's kind of made me sort of the courageous fighter that I am today. So I think if I were to say something to my teenage self, it'd just be to ride it out, and that you are going to get through it, and it's not all going to be great, but in the end it's going to be worth it. And do you know, I think when I sort of flash forward to the end of my life as well, like whenever it might be, I want to look back and think that, you know, I did survive it all, and it has been a real ride, rather than just all good or all bad. You know, there's been the highs and lows, and also the days when nothing much really happens, and just kind of experience it all, because I think that's what makes you who you are. So,
yeah, I love that. I really do.
Oh,
that building, reminding yourself as a resilient person, and that you are, that we are. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's my new, like what I said earlier, my new favorite quote is like, you know, some people think that, you know, if you're strong or courageous, it's because like you're a certain type of person, or like gone through like some really, really awful do you know what I mean? But actually for me, you are strong if you've gotten through, like I said, every day of your life, including the tough ones, because they are who make you who you are. It doesn't make them any easier when they come, and when you have those difficult days where you know, like you said, some of your darkest days, it's not like you'd want to live them again, but you got through them, and you got through each day.
And I think it's that you're constantly changing as well. Like I recently attended through work like a resilience at work like seminar thing, and you go into these things thinking, oh, what they're going to tell me now. But it was actually really good, and one of the things that sort of came back from it was that like self-esteem and well-being isn't all just bubble baths and candles. Like that might be a part of it, but that a lot of resilience is bouncing back, but bouncing back differently to how you went into something. So like the good stuff and the bad stuff, I feel that every time I've bounced back, I have bounced back slightly different, and that's when I've let go of people as well. Do you know, people who were part of my life a few years ago or 20 years ago, do you know, they might not still be there anymore because they're not right for me right now, and I have changed, and that's a good thing, and I'll probably continue to change for the next 50, 60 years of my life, and it's not bad. It's just me being resilient and showing that I've learned from that experience, and I'm now prioritizing different things that are right for me right now. And so yeah, I'm not expecting to stay the same for the rest of my life, and that's also fine. I think I've come to real peace with that I'm going to keep adapting and changing to be the best version of me that I can be as I keep going. So yeah.
Yes, Frankie. I love it so much.
Yeah, so good. Well, I think yeah, you've given us so much
good
wisdom, and yeah, just like I feel inspired. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all that with us and sharing your story as well, because it's really powerful.
Well, hopefully we can get you to Sheffield soon.
I know. As soon as we're all allowed, I'll be like, let me in.
We'd love to have you come to our centre. We're really sad. We were excited to have you come to our Girls' Day this year that we've obviously had to postpone, but we'd definitely love to have you as soon as we can.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
No, it's fine.